Nobody ever got to the elite levels of curling without picking up a broom first.
Without being really strong with the broom.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Coaches on Couches.
Bing slouches.
Well, today we're going to talk about skills.
Skills?
Skills pay the bills,
Like a
baby.
skill saw?
Not a skill saw.
Not a skill saw.
No, there's all these like little intricate skills involved in just about any sport. And it's like really commonplace among like field sports, team sports, that stuff. Like if you're a basketball player, you work on shooting baskets a lot. It's a skill. Mm-hmm. If you're a lineman, like you're like the way you come off the line and punch and move, it's not all fitness. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make.
Yep.
There are a lot of things. So within our 5 pillars coaching system that we will talk about in a second, one of the pillars is technique and sport-specific skills, because those things are like everyone focuses on fitness pretty much.
Yeah, training plan, right?
Yeah, but there's a whole ton of other things that you can work on and improve that also move the needle. Mm-hmm. And so today we're bringing skills to the forefront.
I like it.
All right.
So much to it.
Let's do it.
We're going to do our best to keep this under, 7.5 hours?
Yeah. All right, I'm Coach Dale Sanford.
I am Coach Bryant Funston. We are the co-founders of BPC Performance Coaching, where we specialize in helping time-crunched athletes optimize their busy schedules so they can maximize their athletic performance. Every BPC coach is trained in our 5 pillars coaching system that has been developed over the last, wait for it, 12 years, because it's May, through our work with athletes of all ages and ability levels, from fresh off the couch to world championship competitors. You can find out more about BPC by going to buildpeakcompete.com, checking out Facebook and YouTube at Build Peak Compete, or all up on the Instagram at BPC Performance.
There you go. Got to change that in your script.
I did.
Change it to 12.
I did. I actually put it in there right before we started.
This is totally off topic, but I feel like we're due for another like funny video.
I know.
It's been so long.
I know.
For those of you who
the leg shaving one may have been one of our last funny ones. And that was back when I broke my hip socket. It's been a hot minute since that.
We used to have a lot of time to plan out these funny videos that we thought were funny.
Yeah.
Anyways,
we think we're really
funny. Actually don't care if you think they're funny, but we thought they were hilarious. So we have this whole list of ideas of all these funny videos that we want to do.
Surprise feed zone.
Yeah, the surprise feed zone is
if you're
number
interested
one.
in the surprise feed zone,
let us know. Especially if you own one of those like Borat bikinis.
2. Unless you own 2.
No, I'm not borrowing it. No. I'm not asking to borrow one. No. All right, skills.
All right, moving on.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of, basically the three main sports that we work with, cycling, running, and triathlon. We're going to kind of break each sport down and kind of bring the major skills that you should be working on to the forefront. Mm-hmm. So that, it's really more of the more you know type of thing today.
Yeah.
So we want to cover those. We'll give a few tips on the whys and hows, but we just want you to understand that there's a lot of things out there that are going to make you a better athlete that don't involve your training plan.
Yep.
I mean, it's...
Oh, exactly. There's so much of this. And I was actually just having a conversation on a group ride that we did with people who, if you're not familiar with how to ride in a group, you can have a really big engine. You can have done all the training you want. But if you don't know how to ride efficiently in a group, you're not going to overpower a fast group. and you may get spit out the back just because of that.
So let's just let's dive into it. Let's start with cycling.
Cycling, bam.
Since it's our
Yep.
our forte here.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, pack riding in general, pack riding skills, like moving around in a pack.
Yeah, for those that want to race, especially anyone that's racing, moving in a pack. I did Joe Martin one year, big field, 100+ people, and I swear it took me an hour to get to the front of the race just because I wasn't as confident as I should be in navigating through a pack. But that's a skill in itself. So like some tips there, keep your elbows out. You know, when you're in a group, aerodynamics is not going to make a big difference. You're in a group, you're in a draft. Keeping your elbows out. So first point of contact, if you do bump someone, that's where most people start getting freaked out, is going to be on your arm and not in your handlebars. That can cause you to swerve all over the place. And another big one for me was when I finally, I'd gotten so used to like drafting, which we'll talk about drafting here in a second, but being right behind someone. And so in a pack, I was trying to do the same thing. And I was always so nervous about overlapping wheels anytime those, pace fluctuations would happen, that I ended up having people who'd always like sort of take the spot that I felt like I should be in. And what you want to do is essentially stagger the two wheels in front of you. So you're going to have people in front of you. If you place your wheel in between those two, now if there's a swerve, they're going to hit each other. They can't clip your wheel. If there's a slowdown, you're not going to... Well, they could, yes, but it's less likely. But if there's a slowdown, you now have a buffer. That tire is not coming straight into your front wheel. And instead, you've got a buffer. Your tire can go in between as you react and slow down. So always going to be risk, but just those two things there, I have found make a big difference in being able to be confident in a pack, but also fill gaps in a pack.
I think that one of the big skills that I've learned over the years about pack riding is knowing who to be behind and who not to be behind.
Yep.
And so, generally speaking, if you do group rides and races and stuff, you tend to learn who the strong people are. And you can kind of pick some people out that okay, if there's a gap forming and so-and-so's in front of you, don't sweat it because they're going to close it. They'll do the work for you. So you just kind of learn the people and you learn who to be behind and who not to be behind. It's a skill. It's just it takes a little time. It takes a little practice. All of these things are impossible to practice unless you're racing or riding.
Unless you're out there doing it.
Riding group ride. You got to be out there doing it.
And then be active about actually doing that when you're on a ride. I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to put myself in that position. Another time moving up in a pack, especially in a race situation, before corners. So right before turns, the pack tends to swing wide, whichever side of the road it may be on, and starts to line up a little bit more as people set up for the turn. That's a great time to be able to move up some places.
I've going back to positioning yourself, it's always, I've always found it's way, it's always way easier to kind of stay in the group if you're in the first 10 wheels versus the back 10 wheels. Because if any of those pace fluctuations happen, it amplifies on its way back. And that's where you kind of get in that yo-yo effect. So if you're not the strongest person at the spike and recover type efforts, you're going to do yourself a disservice by being on the back of the group. So, it's one thing if you're in a really, really strong, smooth, pro 1-2 group, you can kind of float the further back, parts of the race, but in most group rides and smaller races and stuff like that,
hillier races,
you're going to be so much better off being closer to the front than closer to the back.
Yeah, so that's essentially our second major point, positioning at key times, I like to say. If you know a hill's coming up, you want to be near the front. If you know there's a time where a breakaway is likely to form, you want to be near the front. If you're getting to a twisty part of the course, all of those things are going to cause that pack to compress, that accordion effect to happen.
Yep.
And the further up you are, the better off you're going to be. If you're on the back, you're going to be feeling like the race, like the pace is impossible, and wondering how the heck they're going so hard at the front and fast. When really you're probably working harder. You're having to slow up more. You're having greater speed differentials. You're having to sprint for longer to get back into the group.
Yep.
And then you're probably grabbing brakes again right as the next little hill hits or the next corner hits. And now you're losing all that speed you just worked so hard to build, and you're repeating that. So the more technical a course is, right away I know, especially like crit racing, I know the more turns, the more technical, put yourself at the front, and it's a skill to stay there.
Yeah. I mean, that's like we look at power files and race files and stuff like that all the time. And it happens all the time that we have an athlete that has the physical ability to like stay in a race, be at the front of a race and, even possibly podium or win a race with the fitness they have in the category they're in or whatever.
Yep.
They just don't have the skill yet to position themselves in the right spot. And so they end up having to work harder than everyone else. And then they end up inevitably either popping late in the race or making some dumb decisions, and you overwork, and then you're toast. You got no fitness for the end.
Yep. And let's be honest, if you're at the back of the pack when a breakaway goes,
see ya.
It's race over just because of where you were at. Which I think is a good time to segue into our next one. So drafting essentials, learning how to draft and how to stay in a draft is a key thing that I don't think a lot of people necessarily get all the time. And even more than that, or along with that, I guess, is you constantly have to be thinking about the course and the wind direction. And knowing a right turn's coming up, we've been in a headwind, it's now going to be a crosswind, like putting yourself on the proper side of the group, knowing when to move to one side versus the other of a person, knowing who to be behind. Kind of goes back to one of your first points you made. Don't be behind the tiniest person in the group. Find the biggest, the smoothest person out there. Obviously you want them strong, and put yourself behind that person. Don't be afraid to move, use that moving in a pack to get behind the best person to be behind. If you're able to save 5%, that's extra power you're going to have later on when it matters.
Absolutely. So that's what racing is, right? Bike racing. That's what bike racing is essentially making the race as easy as possible on you until the moment where you feel it's the winning moment, whether that's at the end or, whatever in the middle or from the gun. You have to, you're trying to make it easy so that you have the juice in the legs to do a winning move when it needs to happen.
Yep.
So if you're positioning yourself poorly, like not moving around the pack efficiently, not getting in the draft when there's a wind coming across your face and you're just eating it and wondering why this race is so hard, you're going to end up not having the legs.
Yeah, at any point in time during, like in a race, at any point in time, I know which direction the wind's coming from. Like you should always know. If someone were to say, hey, which way is the wind coming from? You should be able to say it, and you should be on the downwind side of that. You should be putting yourself on the downwind side of it. Even if the pace isn't hard, and I think that's a mistake so many people make, is they're like, oh, well, I was only riding at my endurance power. Yeah, but you're putting out more work than you needed to. Like you could be saving that, you could be banking that, and it's going to be extra you can use down the road. We don't have an unlimited amount of energy we're going to have over the course of a race. So your goal is to save as much as you can till it matters. All right, we could keep beating on that one for a long time.
I think it's funny when people, they do a race, the file comes in, and they're like, "But I hit a new best hour power," and I'm like, "You should not have."
Yeah, we don't want that.
We do not want
unless
that.
You're off the front solo for an hour.
Right. That would be my next question. Like, were you soloing for the win?
Yeah.
Or what? Or time trial, or that's one thing, but if you're hitting your best hour power and you're finishing mid-pack, you're wasting a lot of juice.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now I had, like, speaking of file, I was in the same race as an athlete of mine, and there was one spot on the course. It was a crit race, so it was happening every 2 minutes or so, that he was getting caught trying to move up in the wind, and I was staying in a draft on the downwind side. And there's times where I was looking at his video where we're like moving same speed. He's in the wind. I'm in the draft in this big crosswind section. He's pushing like 500 watts and I'm pushing like 300 watts. Yeah. Massive difference. That's a big match. 500 watts is a match for pretty much every person out there.
Yeah.
Minus the super high end folks. Whereas 300, yeah, it's a lot of power, but it's much more in the realm of you can repeat that for a lot of folks. So, and that was just a drafting thing. Like, he should have been drafting. His movement in a pack was poor. His positioning in a pack was poor. Like, all of these things caused him to get popped when he could have been doing the effort I was and been fine. Like, he could handle the numbers that I was doing.
Yeah.
I was just putting myself in a better position. So that's something we worked on in the next race. He stayed with the whole time. Like, he was able to help animate and help do stuff later on because of that. So it's huge. It's massive.
Yeah. All right, we beat that horse.
We did. All right, so this kind of moves into, I think this is a good time to move into pace line efficiency. So a lot of times, group rides, we'll start going into pace lines. If you're not familiar with what that is, it's a way you kind of rotate and share the workload in a group. But it happens a lot in races if you find yourself in a breakaway or possibly chasing a breakaway. And being efficient in a pace line is huge. So kind of my keys there, kind of goes back to drafting essentials. You want to make sure you're behind. I always make sure I'm behind the biggest, the smoothest, and ideally the slowest.
Yeah, you want to be,
You don't want to be behind the person who's feeling the best, because they're going to be pulling through too hard, which is going to cause you to have to surge. You don't want that person to be behind you because they're going to be pulling through too hard. You're going to have to surge to get back on the wheel.
Yeah.
But if you can find someone who's going to provide a good draft.
If you get 2 weak sauces, get between them.
Sandwich yourself.
Smooth weak sauces?
We call this a sauce sandwich.
Yeah.
A weak sauce sandwich. But you'll be, it's amazing the difference that decreasing your amount of time that you spend in the wind, because you're able to get around that person quicker, and the fact that you're getting a good draft, but also the fact that they're kind of pulling through slow allows you to come around them a little faster. It's like all those things helps you decrease your workload in the group relative to what everyone else is. And that's what you need to be thinking about. Like, how can I be doing the least amount of work or equal to the person doing the least while still helping this group succeed if you feel like you have a chance to win from it. So those are kind of my keys. Did I miss anything?
No. Oh, that's pretty good. How about number pinning?
This one's huge. This is probably why a lot of people don't race bikes. That is a skill.
It's kind of a skill.
It is a skill. First off, don't put it upside down.
Nope, that's a rookie move.
That's a rookie move. Also, don't turn it into a parachute.
Yep.
Some races don't like that, although I've never seen an official say that it's not allowed. But crumbling your race number so that it's not like the hard flappy.
I've had maybe a couple say that they don't, not to do it.
Don't do it next time.
And then I did it anyway.
You can't fold your numbers under, at least in the USA cycling stuff.
You can't make them smaller.
You can't make them smaller. Pro tip, so long as you don't care about stickiness on your kits, the 3M spray. Don't go with the super strong. Don't go with the super strong.
What is it, the 45?
Something like that.
It's a lower strength one. If you get too strong, you'll have that stuff on your skin, the jersey.
Funny story. One of our good buddies, we went and raced in Chattanooga, first time using the spray, and he had on like the summer jersey. It was a cold race too, but that's all he had. So it was very thin in spots, and his number, we loaded it up with the strong spray, and it stuck to his skin. He went to take his jersey off and he couldn't get it off his skin because it had soaked through. So be careful with that. Don't over apply. But that just helps it actually helps if you're solo by yourself. It can kind of make it easier because you can stick it on you and then take your jersey off and then pin it if you're really trying to get a good tight pin job there. How many pins do you usually use?
Oh man, is that the debate?
Well, each corner, and then I like one in the middle of each.
So I'll
like
do
an
one
8-pinner.
Yeah, I'm usually 8, and then if I just can't get it right without using the spray, I'll put a dead center pin right in the middle of the.
Whoa!
Yeah,
bold.
Yeah, you got to keep it from flapping.
The dead center.
Yeah.
So Dale's a 9-pinner.
I could sometimes.
Weight weenies across the world are cursing you right now. Number pinning. So there we go. All right, what else we got?
Attacking, sprinting, accelerating in general. There is a timing element to all of it, which is a huge skill.
That is definitely a skill.
But also we're borderlining technique here.
Yeah.
Because there's obviously technique involved in attacking, sprinting, accelerating. But the skill of it is very much the timing.
Very much so. Yep. And positioning. It kind of goes back to positioning as well.
If you're that guy who attacks from the front,
don't do it.
Poor idea.
Don't do it. And if you're going to attack from the front, it's not an attack.
Yeah,
the skill there is the slow roll.
Yeah, the slow roll.
Where you pretend like you're not doing anything and just slowly try to motor away.
Yeah. Anytime you get out of the saddle, it makes people freak out. And everyone's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. But if you do like the unassuming
low cadence roll, the low cadence slow roll,
like maybe they'll just let me roll away for a little while.
I've actually had that work before.
Yeah, me too.
It doesn't work very often, but so our keys, or at least my key here for when you're attacking, it's not the sprint finish. So let's separate these two. But if you're trying to get into a breakaway, you want to decrease the surge you need. You want it to be as minimal as possible. So that's where timing comes in. So I always like to attack after the pace has been high. So if I'm sitting there in the group, being very efficient, behind the big person, drafting well, and I feel it's been hard for a long period of time, as soon as I feel it ease off and the front of the group is slowing down, that's when I just maintain or possibly surge, keep your speed, and you essentially kind of slingshot around the front group. It allows you to not have to hit that big sprint power that's going to impact your ability to then sustain power, because you got to be thinking about both. So if you can keep that peak wattage lower, you're going to have more success sustaining afterwards. And what you always want to be thinking about is speed differential between the people at the front and you. So you need to have a successful attack. The skill here is carrying a lot of speed past the front of the group, because you want them to go, oh crap, that guy's moving.
I'm not chasing it.
I'm not chasing. You want them to be looking back and going, who's going to chase that?
Yeah. So what you're trying to, you're trying not to have to get out of the saddle to get a gap. And so I do the same thing most of the time, and it's usually I'll start about 10 wheels back and then gain some momentum up to about 3. And then I'll just put it quick punch, based like the old Cancellara seated sprint, to get the old slingshot. Occasionally, you if you want to hurt some feelings, you get out of the saddle and you put in about 5 pedal strokes pretty hard and then sit down, and you'll get a big gap, pretty quickly. But you've also probably taken a little match, maybe not full match, but a little match to put in that peak effort there. So again, it's all about making your efforts as easy as possible on yourself. So finding ways to get cheap gaps. I'm that jerk that attacks into a turn.
That's what I was just about to say. The second thing I always do is I look to allow a corner, me carry more speed through a corner than what the group's going to do, and then you're building a gap while you're not pedaling. And what's better than that?
The name that comes to mind is our buddy Alan Rothrock. When he was racing crits with us, that dude had no no sense for self when he went into a corner when he was trying to get a gap, but he wouldn't necessarily attack it, he would just put this big surge past the group into the corner, and then he cornered so well that he got a nice big gap without having to really put a big dig in.
Yep.
Which goes into our next point. Cornering.
Cornering. Yep, I was going to say. Next one, cornering.
I mean, it's probably one of, like, if you're gonna go and spend time practicing a skill as a bike racer, practice cornering. Like above and beyond, because it's going to make all the other things easier. The positioning, the attacking, and all that stuff. It's going to make that easier on you. If you're confident cornering, you can take good lines and not, basically if you take a bad line, you're creating more resistance on the tires. And so you're going to slow up a lot more than everyone else. You can, so if you're kind of that person who's in a group and you constantly see that every time we come around a somewhat of a bend that you're getting gapped off, you need to work on cornering. Like,
absolutely. Yeah, if you can turn an area where we just talked about, if you can actually attack in a corner without pedaling. So if you're on the opposite end of that, if you're so bad at cornering that you're causing gaps, you're allowing gaps to open, you're allowing the group to essentially attack you, which means now you have to respond to the gap you've opened. We call it reverse attacking.
Yeah.
So if you're great at reverse attacking, you now have to sprint to get back up to the group. And each time you do that, that's a surge. That's a match. That's something that has no impact on you animating the race. It's just you making things harder on yourself.
Yeah.
So you gotta get good at cornering.
And it happens in every corner.
If you're going to race crits, you better corner
If you're going to race road races, you better learn to corner, because if you're having to literally put out a sprint style effort to stay on a group at every turn, you're not going to have the legs to go when it really matters.
Nope.
Like, and those were just because you made it harder on yourself.
Well, and then you're going to question your fitness. You're going to question your training plan. You're going to question all those things when really it's a skill that you're just not good at and you need to improve it.
Absolutely.
Which goes into our next one, descending. Cornering, descending, usually descents have corners.
I'm not going to lie.
Which is why it's a skill.
I could probably use a little work on descending. We just don't get to do it much. So, like, anytime we get out on an actual climb, like, if we could go up and down it maybe 5 or 6 times, I'd get pretty comfortable doing it. But we just don't get to enough. And that's just part of it.
Memphis doesn't have good descents.
No.
Fun fact. Memphis is not... It's not the mecca
not known
for descent training.
Yeah, I mean, so it is definitely a skill, and you build, with any skill, you get better at it, you build confidence, you test yourself a little bit more, you build confidence.
Ask Richie Port whether or not descending is a skill.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, look at the guys in the pro peloton who are the best at it. They win a race because of their descending skill.
They'll attack at the very top.
They leave the group, and everyone's trying to stay with them, but they can't because these people are so skilled at descending.
1 second every corner.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, and that's the kind of time gaps you can get if you're really good at it. You just soak up time every corner. And sometimes it's can't do super tuck anymore.
No super tucking.
But
unless you're in the race lead. If you're the overall race leader, I think they'll showing they turn a blind eye.
Is that true?
That's a side story.
Anyway, okay. Yeah, so descending, huge. It's a huge skill. It's probably the most nerve-wracking one of all the skills. If you want to see some pretty crazy stuff, check out Brian Safa. If you look him up on the old Instagram and YouTube, pretty intense descending videos.
Whatever you do, just don't think about your tire popping.
Yeah, that's not going to help.
Just put that out of your brain.
Yeah. You can't.
Don't Google Jens Voigt downhill wreck. Don't do that.
Don't Google any downhill wrecks. Yeah.
All right, moving on. This is getting long.
Yeah. So last one that actually does make a difference, and we could do an entire podcast on it, and we might, is pack manipulation. This is where the Oscars meet.
This is I was going to say, this is the other side of the library from how to win friends and influence. This is the influence people part.
Yeah. this is where you put on your acting skills, and it's basically the skill of getting other people to do what you want them to do in the group, in hopes that they are going to do more work than you, or do the work for you and make it easier on yourself.
Yep.
So examples would be when a gap opens, you get behind you're behind somebody and you're like, get it. And you basically try to pump them up.
Close it.
Yeah, and you get their brain working. You get that that fight or flight response going, and they'll close that gap for you.
Or they'll get it very close.
Oh yeah, or they'll get close enough where you didn't have to do the majority of the work.
Then just say thanks as you drop them.
Yeah. And then there's things like you get in a group with really strong people, and you're like, hey guys, I'm just happy to be here.
Or I don't speak English.
Yeah. Or like, I'm cramping. You give the old, I'm cramping. But you're not really cramping.
Or start breathing hard. Like you can just breathe really hard and people will assume.
Man.
Or, if you want to skip a pull, go pretend like you're fussing around with getting food open.
Yeah. I mean, it is such a skill, and it can play so heavily on how much you actually, like how much work you have to actually do in a race. And it's all about making it as easy on yourself as possible. And if you can convince other people to do the work for you in your place.
Michael Poole put this well, and it was eat off everyone else's plate before you eat off yours.
Yeah, exactly.
So get them to do as much, burn up all their energy without you having to. One thing I love to do is when I'm in a group. Are we
giving away too many secrets here?
I think we might be.
This is bad for
This is one of my favorites, though.
Tuesday Night Hammerfest.
This could be. This is my favorite. It's when I'm in the pack, I'm looking like, hey, the people in front of me, would that be a favorable breakaway? And if so, before the next corner, I'll just sit up and let that group roll away. So now they've gotten a gap without doing anything. And now it's a matter of, okay, either the people behind are going to have to burn a match to get up there, or the break's going to be established and they're going to have to work a lot harder later on. But just knowing when to sit up and open a gap can be a way to manipulate others into burning matches that you don't have to.
Yeah, that's definitely falls into Pack Ninja.
The ninja move. Yeah. That's black belt. That's a black belt in Pack Ninja.
Yeah. All right, so we've pretty much covered a lot in cycling.
Yeah, I told Dale that that could probably be just its own podcast. How long are we in?
We probably could end it.
How long are we in?
30 minutes in.
Should we come back with the other 3 later?
I think we're committed now.
We're committed?
All right.
Feel free to pause and hit this tomorrow.
Yeah.
On your
we'll have
commute.
to put it in the notes of, okay, triathlon starts 30 minutes later.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to...
The other 2 are quicker, I feel like.
They're a little bit quicker. It's one thing when there's like when you're in a sport that's you versus, like you're on your own. There's it's more of like a time trial style thing.
Yeah.
Whereas with cycling, there's so many more strategic parts to it. Yeah. But in triathlon, like there are several things that are big time sucks if you're bad at them. The number one, and we have an entire podcast on this.
There's a reason we put it number 1 today.
Yeah. Transitions. If you are awful at transitions, you are giving up time. It is a skill.
Lots of
time. It takes time to work on like the order of how you set it up, the order of the things you put on, how you set things out so that it's less time to get it on, what you do and don't have to put on before you get out of transition. All those things can easily be minutes.
And just having the right mental state of mind going into a transition. Like, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to gain time, not lose time.
Yeah.
Like, being aware of it.
And falls in, like, mounting and dismounting the bike. All these things are skills that are involved, that are centered around the transitions. And, I mean, I've done countless transition clinics over the years and have seen people take minute, 90 seconds off of each transition. And that's 3 minutes in a race, and that could be a sprint race.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like 3 minutes is that's several placings, like most of the time. So transitions, if you have never worked on them, take the time to work on them. And like, honestly, my goal when I do a transition clinic is to have you spend no more than 15 seconds at your bike at T1 and no more than 10 seconds at your bike at T2. So
this is going to be for short course.
When there's a standard transition, standard transition, like obviously if it's like an Ironman or something like that where you have the bags and all the tents and stuff like that's a different whole animal. But when you have your own setup, like, and you get to your bike and your stuff's there, you're like,
so it's like find your fresh pair of socks. Remove your previous pair of socks.
Gloves on.
Put your socks on. Find your gloves.
Elbow pads, knee pads, get them on. So transitions are huge. Something that we kind of left out of the cycling one, but it goes into triathlon is feeding. And that's not necessarily just meaning reaching in your pocket and getting your food out, which is somewhat of a skill that you need to work on. There are other people that can't pull a bottle out of a cage, a skill, like work on it. That's a huge part of it. But a lot of these races will have like bottle exchanges and feed zones and stuff like that, where your choices are either roll through it and get that bottle or stop and get your stuff and then start again. With? I'm rolling.
Roll it, baby.
I'm actually not even stopping, but
I got all my snacks with me.
I try to carry as much as possible with me, but but yeah, I mean, you really don't have a lot of options when there's a feed zone. Stop or roll through. And most people, like, if you said, hey, I'm going to hold out a bottle and you're going to roll by at 20 miles an hour and grab it. First few times the bottle's going to fly, and then you're working, and it's a whole besides the point, but you're working with volunteers that don't necessarily probably know how to hold a bottle. But if you practice it, and you do the old, like let your arm come back as you make contact.
Like if you were catching an egg. Like if someone lobbed an egg to you, that's what you're doing with your bottle.
So practicing that is huge. I pretty much tell everyone who is doing a long course triathlon, practice this. Unless you're planning on stopping, practice the bottle exchange, because there's going to be one or two of them out there and you're probably going to need it. So practice it. I mean,
let's break down the swim stuff.
Swim stuff is the majority, I would say, other than transitions. The swim stuff is the majority of the skills, because obviously swimming is the most technically demanding of the three sports, but there's a lot of skill involved with open water swimming in general. One of which is just getting your wetsuit on and off. Like it literally takes me almost 20 minutes to get my wetsuit on and like where I want it so that it doesn't feel restrictive. It's the right size and all that stuff. But literally, if you don't get that thing up high enough, you're basically going to be doing a resistance training workout during your swim.
Because you're trying to pull the suit to where it should be the whole time. If the
armpit is resistive, every time you reach for the swim, you're going to get resistance, like a resistance band. And then your shoulders are going to blow to bits. I've had it happen. It sucks. I mean, it's terrible. But, you have to get that wetsuit as high as you can in the crotch. You might be.
Did you put anything on your body before you put your wetsuit on?
No, I use like plastic bags and gloves to get it on, to slide on a little bit better. And you don't want to grab a wetsuit with your fingernails. You'll go right through it. So some of them come with these gloves. Some people just use plastic bags to like have something over their fingers. Don't ever grab it with try to pinch it with your fingernails. But getting it up as high as you can in the crotch and in the armpits, and then up on top of the shoulder, like getting the neckline as close as you can to your neck. If the back of your wetsuit is like 2.5 feet wide, and it won't zip on its own, it's not on right. Those things are made to when you have it on right, the zipper is usually no more than 5 inches apart at the top. So you should be able to zip it yourself.
So get it higher.
Yeah, get it as high as you can. Getting it off is another story. I use Tri-Slide. It's a product you spray on the arms, the bottoms of the arms and the lower legs, so that when you do take it off, it just kind of slips off. It's kind of a silicone based lubricant. And you can put it around your neck and stuff like that. but practicing getting it on, practicing getting it off. Don't you dare go to race day and have that be the first time that you put that wetsuit on. It's a horrible idea.
Yep. Same with feeding. Don't have it be the first time you're trying new food.
Right. So while you're in the water, sighting is a massive skill because otherwise you're going to swim like a zigzag, or you might just swim off course altogether. But sighting is a skill, a kind of sometimes a difficult skill to get it first because of the timing of it. You know, you have to like lift your head up, you're trying to take a stroke, and you're trying to get air in at the same time. If you lift your head too high, your feet drop, so you're kind of like got to play with how high you bring your head. You know, it is a skill to practice for sure. And it basically determines how much extra you swim. So practice your sighting. You could do it. If
you're a bad swimmer, make sure you're a really good sighter.
The way that I do it in a pool is if you have a pool clock on either end of the pool, you'll probably only get maybe like 2 sights per length. But when you do it, you sight, and I try to read the time on the clock and then go back. So that's kind of a little tip. Or if there's like a sign or something that's on the wall in front of your lane, like go up, try to read part of the sign, and then come back down. It's pretty quick, but you'll get better at it. And the funny thing is you want to be able to discern like colors and stuff when you're doing it, because there are times where you're going to be in a race and all of the swim caps are orange, and so are the buoys. So it's good to like work on your eye, your sight ability, so that you can determine, is it a buoy? Is it
just a really big-headed racer?
Yeah,
Did Shaq just decide to start racing triathlons?
Yeah.
Why is he so far ahead of me?
So sighting helps you swim straighter. Going around turns, buoy turns. The biggest time suck in the swim is going around a buoy, because you're really not making up any distance, and a lot of times it's bunched up. There's a bunch of people there. You might have to go around them. That time that you're taking to turn is time wasted, pretty much.
I really like that spin move.
Oh, the like flip on your back. Yeah. And that is difficult to get at first.
Yep.
I mean, so just going around the buoy. Like whenever we teach people to go around buoys at first, it's just the simple thing of like, only look into the buoy. So you want to be able to breathe both sides. Whole another thing, bilateral breathing is a skill. So being able to breathe both sides. But when you get to a buoy, you literally only want to breathe to that side, because it helps you kind of know that you're making the turn, but also in your stroke, you like power the outside arm.
Yeah.
So it helps you turn faster. If you can learn the old flip-flop technique, it's a huge skill. It's a lot faster for a 90-degree turn. Unfortunately, a lot of turns are steeper than 90 degrees.
Yeah.
A lot of like race courses are triangles, and you end up having to come back on yourself, and it's harder to do like the do flip flop. But it's a whole nother skill. But buoy turns, practice them much as you can, as often as you can, because people get so upset when they do like a test set in the pool, and they're swimming whatever pace, and they get in the open water and it's nowhere near what they've been swimming in the pool, because you have to factor in time for, even if you're swimming in a wetsuit and you have that advantage, you're losing time by swimming too much because you're not sighting well, and you're losing a ton of time at every turn.
Yep.
Because you're not very good at turning around buoys. So, huge skill. You got to learn how to pee on yourself. I mean, throw that in there. You got there's going to be times when you're going to have to go, and your choices are stop. And I'm not saying.
That's where you got to think, what would Forrest Gump do? Just let it go.
I'm not saying practice this in public. I'm just saying, you got to be able to do it.
You pee on the bike? Have
I have never peed on the bike.
you thought about it?
In my wetsuit, don't
Anyone
ever buy
watching
my used
live, would
wetsuits.
anyone watching live, would you please post,
Yeah.
have you peed while on the bike?
Yeah, if you've ever peed on yourself on the bike,
Post in the comments.
the skill in that is just knowing which bottle to pull from so you don't squirt yourself with Gatorade or with sports drink versus plain water. Yeah. So, yeah, peeing on yourself. That's a good one. Cornering is another one. Like on our previous course at the Memphis and May Triathlon had 22 turns. So again, people get really upset when they know they're capable of doing like 20 miles an hour and they end up riding 18 because they had to slow down for 22 turns. So if you know how to corner those and keep your speed up, you're going to be faster overall. It's a skill.
Definite skill. Free speed.
Yeah. Flat changing for like long course triathlon, bike racing, you might have a wheel truck or something like that. You might go to the pits and you got to change a wheel. You got to be able to change a wheel. But in long course, you have to be able to change your own flat. I mean, any triathlon, you have to be able to change your own flat tire. So,
do you have a distance that you will take a flat kit versus not?
I don't take a flat kit for anything under a half iron.
Yeah.
I'll take one for a half iron, but I generally know that if I flat, it's done. It's over.
Yep.
For me anyways. I'll still finish, but mentally I check out.
Yep.
But for Olympic or shorter, I don't even bring one. And that it bit me 2 years ago at Nationals. I flatted a mile from transition. And I'm like, well, I could walk it in, but I'm like, well, I had another race the next day. I did sprint the next day. I was like, I'll just save the legs, but I didn't have anything to change it with. I didn't bring a flat kit.
Yeah.
I'm a weight weenie when it comes to the short course.
Oh, I'm with you.
Yeah, so changing flat. Going back to the swim, drafting. Drafting is a huge advantage in the water, but you have to know how to do it.
Yeah, put your face right at the feet.
Yeah, get right where they're like flicking your nose with their toes. Yeah.
We call it nose to toes.
Yeah. Basically, with drafting, your best bet is to kind of be offset to somebody. Because if you ever look at a boat in the water, right, the wake goes out into the side. And so if you're kind of just offset to one side, you're going to get a better draft than if you're like in the bubbles of where they're actually kicking and propelling the water backwards so they can go forward. It's actually one of the worst places to be. So get off people's toes and get over to the side where their wake is, and so that it helps you kind of like pull you along.
So nose to toes is a no-goes.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever. Again, most of these skills are in the swim. Dolphin diving is another skill. Like when the water's too deep to run, but really not shallow. It's shallow enough that you're really swimming. You can get propulsion off the bottom. And so basically, you can basically do a dolphin dive, or it kind of looks like a butterfly stroke, where you're pushing off the bottom, and you can make some good ground that way without spending a lot of energy. Also useful for like if you're in an ocean swim, useful for getting under waves when you're going out trying to get out past a break, and that sort of thing. But it is a skill.
Should we just Google David Hasselhoff?
Yeah. Just Google the Hoff dolphin dives, and you'll get just a rundown on how to do it. I actually I've had a couple of really bad dolphin dives in races, and contacted the bottom of the ocean.
Sandpaper on your nose?
Yeah, it was bad. I hadn't practiced it quite that much, but it looked really cool. Pros do it, so
you went for it.
I went for it.
You went all in.
And I got, yeah.
You did more swan dive than dolphin dive, huh?
Absolutely. And then this last little skill is just it goes for every sport. It's pacing. Pacing is a skill. We got people that you get somebody early on that's done long course, you tell them to go pace a mile, and they have no idea how to pace a mile. It's just a skill. You have to do it. You have to get the feel for it. And then you just have to work on it. It's like we throw it into the category of effort regulation, because it's not like pacing. You think of, everyone wants to say like, well, I'm holding 8-minute miles for this long and whatnot. but it also has to do with your putting out more and less effort when the course is harder or easier.
Yep.
So learning, basically, our elevator speech is push the course harder when it's harder, take the recovery when it's easier.
Yep.
That's how you gain the most time. Like if you look at a pro, look at like the pro time trials and stuff like that, or even in the like the pro, like some of the more recent pro triathlon races, these guys are in a headwind. Oh, they're just drilling themselves.
Yep.
And they're not going that fast compared to what they did in the tail, but their power and everything is just so much higher. They're drilling it, because that's when they're going to gain the most time, when it's the hardest, and a lot of people get mentally defeated because they're not moving as fast. That's when you push. That's when you're going to gain the most time. So pacing, effort regulation, huge skill. We did have one come in. Our buddy Liddell says that you only pee on yourself in long course races. I say nay. You got to go. You got to go. Again,
I'm assuming Liddell's saying on the bike and not,
I mean, I guess
like in the water when you're getting ready to start.
Hey, the swim is all.
That's fair game.
That's fair game. When you're in water,
Yeah.
whether you have a wetsuit on or not, I mean, this is maybe an offshoot, but if you ever see somebody that's kind of walked away from everyone else and they're just standing there gazing at the sun.
Loners.
Yeah, he's peeing. They're peeing on themselves. Like, yeah. All right, so we'll jump into running here. We've covered kind of a lot of this same stuff,
Yeah,
but there
some
are
of
a
this
few.
carries over.
There are a few things that carry over. Again, some of this we're trying to stay out of like the realm of technique, because technique is a whole other animal. Like practicing movements and stuff like that. Yes, it's a skill, but we're trying to stay away from technique. We're trying to think of these other
more strategic based stuff right now.
Something that's not necessarily movement efficiency as much as it is things that are going to affect your race that you kind of have to think through and work on.
Yep.
Okay, so with running, there is a skill of running tangents and running around curves, running around like the turnaround markers. A lot of times the races these days, you're going to have turnarounds. And so you're just running around a cone. And so there's a lot of ways you can do it, but you can easily lose a few seconds here and there at every turnaround if you don't know how to run it correctly. If you're doing a race on a track, if you can't run a curve, and the term that I used to throw around a lot of times back in the day when I was working more with track athletes is a unilateral track, basically. And so basically you're running on a curve, you're going to run more foot over foot with kind of an inside lean because you're centrifugal force, blah blah blah. So if you haven't learned how to run a curve, you're going to end up losing a lot of speed because you're going to be putting so much force on the outside leg. You're going to basically, that not that the leg's going to blow up, but you're not putting force in the right direction all the time.
Yep.
Running tangents on a road course. So like open road course, you might get dual lanes. When you're running, if there's a turn, cutting out the inside of that turn is a huge time savings. Why anybody would go and do the big arc around the edge of the turn, maybe if they're like going to high five their buddy or take that beer
little hand up.
Yeah, beer hand up or something like that. But like you can cut the inside of every curve, and generally when they measure a road course, if they're doing a certified measurement, the measuring people are gonna measure tangents.
Yep.
And they're gonna cut off
shortest line.
Yeah, shortest line through every turn. So when you get to the end and you complain that this certified road course is a tenth too long,
it's not.
It's not too
long.
You ran too far. So running tangents is a skill, a pretty easy skill to master if you just think about what's the shortest distance through this turn. And no, I should not be weaving back and forth through people. So, in trail running, there actually is a lot of skill to trail running, and we talked about hill running in a podcast a while back, before we had all the fancy lights and stuff like that. But we talked about hill running specifically and the technique of hill running up and down. But there is a lot of skill involved in running downhill efficiently, and like getting over like traversing like rocky sections, getting over trees, and using trees to slow yourself down going downhill, because the majority of the impact on your body happens when you're going downhill. I've said that a million times. People still worry about running uphill. It's all on the downhills. So if you can slow yourself down a little bit and reduce the impact on the downhills, your muscles aren't going to break down quite as fast. So there is some skill involved in like, hey, I'm going down the hill. I can grab onto this tree to slow myself down. I don't need to jump off this rock. I'm feeling pretty good. I don't necessarily need to parkour this rock and
Hardcore parkour,
and
baby.
put a big,
Unless there's a camera.
unless there's a camera.
It's a photo op.
Yeah, but there is a lot of skill into how to get down, choosing lines and stuff like that, when you're trail running to make the race a little bit easier on yourself. We talked about pacing and effort regulation. That's a huge one. I mean, that's just the skill.
Yeah.
The skill in running, as far as running is involved. And then just like fueling in general. I think it goes for all three of the main sports. There's a lot of areas of feeding, whether it's getting a feed from a feed zone, whether it's getting your food out of your pockets or out of your, I mean, look, when I started cycling,
Alligator arms.
I could not reach in a back pocket. Like I had no mobility in my shoulders. And so I had to like stick my gels around my pant leg so that I could actually have something to eat. But there's this, eating is a skill, getting the food wrapper back in. And then there's also kind of a skill as far as like training your gut.
I was gonna fire that one out there. Yeah.
We have had people over the years like, I just can't eat. Like, well, you need to try and you need to work on it. And there are ways to train your gut to handle more food, different makeups of food and stuff like that. It does come around.
If you don't believe us, just Google Coney Island hot dog eating competition.
Yeah.
You can train your gut.
There are a lot of people out there in the ultra endurance world who eat some crazy, not just crazy stuff when they run, but amounts, like amounts of food that you wouldn't think would be tolerable
or digest
And it's not that they could do it like right away. They had to work on it. They had to train their body, and then you also learn that there are certain things that you can't eat, like when you're at different intensity levels. So like there is a skill involved in the trial and error of figuring out what you can eat, how much you can eat, and like in the realm of what you need as well.
Yep. When to eat it.
Yeah. So I mean, it's fueling. It's the fourth sport, but it's a massive skill. What did we miss? Anything? We miss anything?
I mean, we thought we got most of it, but what did we miss? If there's something we missed, you can shoot it to us.
Post it up.
Coach or couch. At Build, Pete, Compete.
Yeah.
Or post up in the comments if you're watching on the Book of Faces.
Our Coach Casey.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, our dietitian threw in a comment just now about actually chewing and breathing hard at the same time.
I can't do that.
Yeah, we gotta work on it.
Got a bad nostril over here.
So chewing and like one part of that is learning when not to put the food in your mouth.
Yes.
I'm
about to go up a hill.
Yeah. Chewing and breathing hard is a skill, and it goes along the same line as like being able to drink and then like get your breath back.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, I always tell people, take bigger gulps of fluid. You got to train yourself to do it. It's a skill. Bigger gulps of fluid, and then take a big exhale afterwards, because that helps start the process of getting a big inhale, and kind of like buffers against that maybe like 1 second where you weren't breathing at all because you were actually trying to take a drink. But it's a skill. I mean, there's some...
Yeah, and if possible, it's easier for cycling, really, you know, where decrease your intensity, take advantage of decreases in intensity to use that as a time for feeling. When your heart rate's lower, your breathing rate's lower.
Yeah. And I do think there are a lot of people that don't ever work on these skills because they're afraid to be bad at them. Like transitions and all that stuff. You can practice this stuff on your own time.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't even get into bike handling in general.
Yeah.
You know, you could...
yeah.
Everyone wants to be that person doing the one-arm wheelie up the climb, but you probably want to, you know, you got to practice it. It's just, you know, you could do all this stuff on your own. Obviously, some of this stuff can easily be worked with a trained eye. Have a coach help you, watch you, help you work on this stuff, but it takes time. It takes practice. Yep. I mean, nobody ever got to the elite levels of curling without picking up a broom.
Without being really strong with a broom.
All right. I think that's all we got today.
Last thing, if you have any topics for future podcasts, we'll bring more podcasts to you if you give us topics.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. It's a lot of work to like come up with these ideas.
A lot of brain strain.
Yeah.
So if you got topics, shoot them to us.
Coach or couch, or message us on Facebook, whatever.
Pretty easy to find.
Yeah. All right. Appreciate everyone hanging out, listening, watching. We'll catch you guys next time. Adios.